Pompeii, 79 AD. A wall near the amphitheater, scrawled in charcoal, someone has written, "Celadus the Thracian makes the girls sigh." Another reads, "Crescens the Retiarios holds the hearts of all the girls." These aren't love letters. They're ancient celebrity worship, graffiti celebrating gladiators, the rock stars of the Roman Empire. Men who fought to the death for entertainment became the most famous people in Rome, their faces everywhere, their names on everyone's lips. Roman gladiators were the original influencers. They endorsed products, had merchandise, inspired obsessive fandom, and yes, according to legend, their bodily fluids were collected and sold. Though the truth about that last part is far more complicated than the stories suggest. This is the story of how men facing death became Rome's biggest celebrities, and how we've been mythologizing them for 2,000 years. The celebrity machine. Gladiators were massive stars, not just respected, worshipped. Their portraits graced the walls of many public places. Children played with gladiator action figures made of clay. The most successful fighters even endorsed products just like top athletes today. Clay figurines of gladiators have been found across the Roman Empire, from Pompeii to Britain. A 2000-year-old copper folding knife discovered in an English river featured a tiny gladiator figurine as its handle, suggesting popular fascination with these fighters reached the edges of the empire. These weren't just toys. They were collectibles, status symbols, the Roman equivalent of trading cards or action figures. Kids knew their favorite gladiators by name, fighting style, and win record. And like modern athletes, successful gladiators endorsed products. Gladiator motifs appeared on wine jugs, baby bottles, oil lamps, and household items. Their image offered powerful interpretations: combat, strength, vigor. A wine jug decorated with a gladiator might suggest vitality and masculine energy. A baby bottle might imply health and strength for the child. Historians suggest Roman gladiators were arguably the first influencers of purchasing behaviors. The 2000 film Gladiator even included a scene featuring gladiator product endorsement in the original script, showing a billboard for olive oil. The directors cut it, worried audiences would find it hard to believe, but the evidence says it happened. Giant billboards around Roman cities depicted famous gladiators and advertised upcoming fights. One reads, 20 pairs of gladiators provided by Quintus Manius Rufus are to fight at Nola May 1st. These men held celebrity status amongst the people of Rome. The sex symbols. Gladiators weren't just famous, they were considered irresistibly attractive. Pompeii graffiti makes this abundantly clear. Celadus the Thracian makes the girls sigh. Another fighter is called the delight of all the girls. One gladiator reportedly catches the girls at night in his net, a reference both to his fighting style and his romantic prowess. Roman women wore jewelry dipped in gladiator blood, hairpins, rings, necklaces. Owning something connected to a famous gladiator was like owning a piece of celebrity memorabilia today. It was a status symbol, a conversation starter, proof you had access to glamour and danger. There are even reports that brides would part their hair with an iron spearhead that had killed a gladiator to bring luck to their marriage. The proximity to violence and death somehow translated to fertility and fortune. This obsession makes sense when you consider what gladiators represented: strength, courage, danger. They were disreputable, slaves and criminals, yet they embodied masculine ideals. That paradox made them even more fascinating. Forbidden fruit, dangerous attraction. One Roman politician's wife, Eppia, famously ran away with a gladiator, abandoning her husband, children, and social position for a fighter. The scandal rocked Rome, but it also proved what everyone already knew. Gladiators were magnetic. The sweat myth. Now for the famous claim that Roman women collected gladiator sweat and mixed it into facial creams and cosmetics, believing it was an aphrodisiac. This story appears everywhere, in popular history books, online articles, even children's books. It's repeated so often it's accepted as fact. But recent scholarship reveals a problem. There's no evidence Romans ever did this with gladiator sweat specifically. Here's what actually happened. The Greeks, not Romans, collected sweat and oil from athletes at gymnasiums. After working out, athletes would scrape their bodies with a curved metal tool called a strigil, removing the mixture of olive oil, sweat, and dirt, called gloios in Greek or strigmentum in Latin. This substance was collected and sold, sometimes for huge sums. An inscription from Greece discusses revenue from selling gloios at a gymnasium. Pliny the Elder mentions it changing hands for the equivalent of $500,000. But it wasn't used as an aphrodisiac, it was medicine. Roman doctors like Galen and Pliny noted that gloios was used to treat gynecological problems, inflammations and contractions of the uterus, as Pliny delicately puts it. It was also used for joint pain, inflammations, and various ailments. The key detail: this was athlete sweat from Greek gymnasiums, not gladiator sweat from Roman arenas. And it was medical treatment, not love potion. Pliny the Elder, writing in the 1st century AD, describes the Greek practice with obvious disgust. He's horrified that Greeks scraped athlete sweat from gymnasium walls and used it as medicine. His tone makes clear. Romans found this practice revolting. They weren't adopting it for gladiators. So how did the myth spread? Likely through a 1965 book by historian Robert Forbes, who wrote that the olive oil mixed with dust and sweat, which the gladiators and athletes scraped from their body with strigils, was collected and sold. He conflated athletes with gladiators, making a claim that has since been repeated thousands of times without verification. What we know for sure. Here's what's documented about gladiator celebrity culture. They were megastars. Graffiti, mosaics, and artwork prove it. Pompeii alone contains dozens of gladiator inscriptions and images. They had merchandise, clay figurines, decorated household items. Their image sold products across the empire. They were sex symbols. Women and men were obsessed with them. The graffiti evidence is overwhelming. They collected bodily fluids were indeed collected. Gladiator blood, specifically. Women wore jewelry dipped in it. Whether this was widespread or just occasional practice isn't clear, but multiple sources mention it. What we can't prove, that gladiator sweat specifically was collected, bottled, and sold as aphrodisiac. The evidence points to athlete sweat from Greek gymnasiums being used medicinally, a very different practice. Does this make gladiators less interesting? Not at all. The documented facts are fascinating enough without embellishment. Why they mattered. Gladiators were the first true mass media celebrities. The Colosseum exposed them to thousands at once. 50,000 to 80,000 spectators per event. Their fame spread through the empire via art, graffiti, and word of mouth. They were also paradoxical figures, socially despised, yet culturally celebrated. Slaves and criminals who became wealthy and famous. Men facing death who lived like kings. Many gladiators were slaves or prisoners of war forced into the arena. But by the 1st century AD, Demographics were changing. Free men began voluntarily signing contracts with gladiator schools, lured by fame and prize money. They chose the danger for a chance at celebrity. Successful gladiators could earn enormous sums, win enough fights, and you might buy your freedom, retire wealthy, and live comfortably. Some became trainers. Others opened gladiator schools. A few even married into respectable families despite the social stigma. The life expectancy was terrible. Most died within a few years. But for those who survived and succeeded, the rewards were unprecedented for people of their social class. The legacy. Roman gladiators pioneered influencer culture. They proved that fame transcends social class, that personality and performance can override societal rules, that people will worship celebrities even when those celebrities are technically criminals or slaves. They also proved that we'll believe almost anything about celebrities if the story is good enough. The gladiator sweat myth persists because it's compelling. Wealthy women so obsessed with dangerous men that they'd wear their bodily fluids. It's gossipy, scandalous, memorable. The truth, that athlete sweat was used medicinally by Greeks, is less exciting. So we keep telling the more interesting version. The final fight. So here's what happened. Roman gladiators became the biggest celebrities in the ancient world. Kids played with gladiator action figures. Adults bought products endorsed by famous fighters. Women obsessed over gladiator sex symbols and wore jewelry dipped in their blood. The claim that women mixed gladiator sweat into cosmetics as an aphrodisiac, that's likely a myth, a confusion with Greek athletic practices combined with 1960s historical embellishment. But the documented facts are extraordinary enough. Gladiators were influencers 2,000 years before Instagram. They turned violence into celebrity, death into entertainment, disgrace into fame. They were the original celebrities, the first athletes to transcend sport and become cultural icons. The proof that humans have always been obsessed with famous people, even when those famous people are fighting to the death. Some things never change. We still worship celebrities, still buy products they endorse, still create myths about their lives. We've just stopped collecting their sweat. Probably.